Hey, everybody, welcome to our presentation called Driven, Creating a Purposeful Life. My name is Patrick Myers. I'm a psychologist and I practice in private practice in Coquitlam and Burnaby, and I also do virtual across the province of Alberta and British Columbia. We are recording this presentation, which will eventually show up on our YouTube channel. So come check out this video and many others, because February is Psychology Month. And every February, the BCPA puts on a couple of these presentations for your entertainment and enjoyment, and hopefully you get to learn something as well. All right, let's take a look at what we have here. We would like to do territorial acknowledgements. We live, learn, connect, work, and play in a province we call British Columbia. However, we want to acknowledge that we do these things across a number of unceded First Nations territories. In Vancouver, in particular, we want to honor the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nations for allowing us to do this kind of a presentation. Thank you very much. You'll notice that I have a bad sense of humor, and that will show up in this every now and then. Of course you have a purpose in life. You pay taxes, don't you? Why do I do this kind of a thing? Well, recent research says that nearly 1 in 3 Canadians, that's 31%, say that their mental health is significantly affecting their work or their studies. When we talk about students, this goes up to 48%. This costs, in total, the Canadian economy somewhere in the range of $51 billion per year in lost productivity. So, stress is a mitigating factor. And one of the stressors that I see a lot of is that people sometimes come into my office feeling kind of lost in life. They are seeking some sense of purpose. And so that's what this presentation is about, is creating a purposeful life. Now, the structure of this presentation is I'm going to start by talking about a bunch of concepts that overlap the idea of purpose. Then I'll define purpose per se. Then I'll give you some of the scientific benefits of purpose. Then I will give you an idea of how to go about finding purpose. Then I'll start talking about the 3 choices in life that we have. Then I'll go to staying on track with purpose. Then I'm going to talk about some caveats that arise with the idea of purpose and the 3 choices. And if we have time left over, we're going to finish off with some of your questions out there. All right, so first one that we're going to try and define is passion. When I first started this presentation, I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. I can just take most of my passion presentation and turn it into purpose. Well, I was greatly mistaken on that one. Passion is very different than purpose is. So passion is considered a strong emotion, such as love, anger, or envy. It's the object of intense desire, ardent love, affection, lust, boundless enthusiasm. That's passion. What else have we got? We've got flow. Now, here's a guy's name that I am going to mess up severely. If you know the right pronunciation, you can always send a little text to me and say, oh, that was terrible. So this is Csikszentmihalyi, and he has something called flow, which entails the confluence of skill, challenge, and attention on an activity that is intrinsically rewarding. We have Carol Riff, who did a lot of research on on well-being and the core features of a happy life. And so she says there are 6 things that are important: personal growth, positive relationships, environmental mastery, autonomy, here's the one, purpose in life, and self-acceptance. Then we take a look at Stephen Hayes and his colleagues in something called acceptance and commitment therapy. They talk about your emotions, your thoughts, your memories. They're just bits of information. Accepting yourself and opening up to unpleasant thoughts and emotions and memories. Connecting to the present moment, we sometimes refer to this as mindfulness. Observing ourselves, noticing ourselves thinking, feeling, doing. The values that we hold that are important for us, which help direct our future behaviors, and a commitment to take action upon these values. So that's acceptance and commitment therapy. And then we have flourishing. So we have Dahl and colleagues who they say that there are 4 important points in flourishing, which is awareness, connection, insight, and purpose. These guys have just come out with a book called, what's it called here? Born to Flourish. That's by Davidson and Dahl. That should be coming out in another couple of weeks. It's coming out in March of 2026. I'm excited to go and read that book. So, Flourishing by Dahl and colleagues. Then, of course, we have Mr. Martin Seligman, who is considered to be the father of positive psychology. And he has developed this, what's called the PERMA model of happiness. And so PERMA stands for positive emotions, optimism. E stands for engagement, which is the idea that effort equals reward. We take a look at relationships and a sense of belonging. We take a look at meaning and purpose for the greater good. And we take a look at accomplishment for its own sake, your life goals. Then we have Mr. Michael Yapko, who is a mentor of mine, and he talks about the idea of having vision, foresight. And this is goal-directed behavior that aims at long-term beneficial outcomes while being aware of potential consequences. And then finally, we get to the one that is most close to purpose, and that is called meaning. So although there are other people in there, the key guy in meaning is Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who was imprisoned in the Nazi war camps during World War II. He also lost his entire family to those death camps. But the thing that sort of kept him going and the thing that he saw in other people were this sense of meaning. And his meaning was he was dreaming of giving a lecture on meaning in life to a vast number of people. Well, there are still conferences honoring Mr. Viktor Frankl. He also wrote a really famous book, which hopefully some of you have read, called Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl is often quoted as saying, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Although it wasn't him who created that, it was actually Friedrich Nietzsche who first did that. So then there are all kinds of different assessments and how we decide what purpose means. And so there's one group of people who have created what's called the tripartite model of meaning. And you can see it here. It includes understanding one's role in life, having a purpose in life greater than oneself, and living a memorable life. So these are all things that are closely associated with purpose. So now we come to a definition of purpose. First of all, we have the etymology of the word purpose. You can see here, Latin, it means forth and place or put, and in other words, to put forth or to propose. Old Anglo-French, propos or proposer is to intend or to propose. So when you take a look at the dictionary, it says, it is the reason that something is done, is used, is made, or exists. It is a feeling of being determined to do or achieve something. It is an abiding intention to achieve a long-term goal that is both personally meaningful and makes a positive mark on the world. So there's a bunch of definitions of the word purpose. So then we move on to my bad sense of humor. Wow, I found my purpose in life, my misplaced values, and my inner child. This is a very sophisticated search engine. Again, my bad humor, please excuse. All right. So then we go to a number of different measures of positivity or well-being, and we find that there are all kinds of health benefits to these different measures of positivity, well-being. So lowered overall cortisol levels, cortisol being one of the big stress hormones, adrenaline being the other big stress hormone, lower heart rate variability, lower heart rate and blood pressure, less chance of a stroke and other cardiovascular diseases, decreased mortality among the elderly, and you can read a whole bunch of others there as well. One of them being better sleep. Okay, so then we take a look at Carol Riff's work on well-being, and she used her own measure of purpose, and she found that lowered cortisol levels were correlated with people who had a higher sense of purpose in life and more personal growth. Lower bad cholesterol and higher good cholesterol were also correlated with high purpose and high personal growth. Now, lowered adrenaline levels were correlated, which is the other stress hormone, were correlated with people who have higher positive relationships and a sense of autonomy. Depression, anxiety, anger, and negative affect were correlated with increased stress hormone of adrenaline, weight, blood pressure, blood sugar. So, in other words, having a sense of purpose is a good thing. More on purpose. Purpose and longevity. Neil Krauss, over a 7-year period, studying a bunch of elderly people with a strong meaning in life. And he found that they had a tendency to live longer. The strongest predictor within the tripartite measure of meaning was purpose in life. And I said elderly people, I should include myself in that group as well. So then we get on to Hill and Turiano, who over a 14-year study found that purposeful individuals lived longer than their counterparts. Now, what was interesting about their study is they found that these longevity benefits did not appear to be conditional on participants' age, their psychological issues, how long they lived during the follow-up period, or whether they had retired from the workplace. Some of these things are considered to be purpose, but didn't matter. Okay, and then we have another person, Patricia Boyle and her colleagues, 2009, 2010, over a 5 to 7 year study. They found that a greater purpose in life was associated with a reduced risk of all-cause mortality, in other words, death, among community-dwelling older persons. A greater purpose in life was also associated with reduced risk of brain amyloid tangles, Alzheimer's disease, and elderly cognitive decline. Again, finding, that these effects were not affected by gender, race, depressive symptoms, neuroticism, social network size, number of chronic medical conditions, or disability. So in other words, purpose, it's a good thing to have in life. We go on to a future contemplation. So I was combing through all the research out there, and I came up with something that I call the future contemplation. But you have to realize that this comes from numerous different sources in how I've gone and created this. So we ask ourselves some questions. So if you're feeling lost, take 5 to 15 minutes per day. Make sure you're in a comfortable place where there are no distractions. Turn off your cell phones, all that kind of thing. And contemplate what you want to see different in your future. Don't expect immediate results. Don't, over push yourself and go like, oh, well, I'm going to study this for like half an hour or 3 hours or something like that. And yet at the same time, do gently pressure yourself, because no pressure, no results. Too much pressure, you get lost in a myriad of possibilities. My apology. So thus, we want to say just 5 to 15 minutes where you look at your life. The first set of questions: what do I want to see different in the next hour? What do I want to see different in the next day? What do I want to see different in the next week, month, year, decade? And you will see that I cap it off at decade, and I'll explain that in a little while. All right? So that's one set of questions that we can ask ourselves. What do I want to see different in the next hour, day, week, month, year, decade? Another way to look at this is, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my likes? What are my dislikes? What are my beliefs? What are my connections? So a little bit of humor here in that one of my strengths is my ability to do math. One of my greatest dislikes is math. So I have left the math behind since I finished off my dissertation. All right, so then we also can ask the question of, how about values? Or sorry, jumping ahead a bit here. If you want more information on strengths, there is the VIA Strengths Questionnaire at authentichappiness.org, or there are other measures of interests and strengths, the Strong Interest Inventory, the Myers-Briggs, or the color test. I can't, say anything about those. Basically, take your top 5 strengths and think of ways you can use those strengths more to get the life that you want. Okay, so now we go to values, jumping ahead myself here. So what are your values? What is important to you in life? Is it curiosity? Is it resilience? Is it connection? Is it et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Is it money? Is it education? I don't know. Doesn't matter. What are your values? What is it that is important in your life? However, realize that when one has values, values equals consequences. So what are my values? And consequently, what am I willing to do to follow these values? What am I willing to put effort into to follow these values? What am I willing to tolerate in following these values? What am I willing to defend in response to my values? And what am I not willing to do in response to my values? Okay? So it's important. Values are important, but it's also important to consider the consequences of your values. All right, what do we got next here? We have the last question that I like to ask myself, and again, my bad sense of humor. What do I want to be when I grow up? So here we have Herman, and he says, listen, son, it's about time we had a man-to-man talk. You're at a time in your life when all you want to do is have a good time. No responsibilities, no worries. Son, can you give me a few tips? All right, that's a bad joke. All right, so then we go on to the idea that I used these strategies that I've listed here to decide upon my third career. This is my third career. And at age 35, I stepped back into a classroom where I spent 12 years in university. And in university, I learned lots about psychology. And learning about psychology, I learned about some things that might help speed this process up a little bit. And so there are 2 more questions based on 2 sort of drives that I've added to the future contemplation. The first being greed. Now, I know greed has negative connotations, but it also has some positive aspects. If I gave you a check for $650,000, what would you do differently with your life? Would you go back to school? Would you put a deposit on a new home? Would you save the whales or contribute to any other kind of charity that you want? Would you start up your own startup business? Would you take your friends and family on a world trip, possibly a bunch of them? Would you rent a penthouse suite in downtown Vancouver and just party all the time? I'm not sure. Now, I don't have the $650,000 to give you, but when we ask this question, it starts making us think about, what would I do differently in my life? Alternatively, we have fear. So if I had a crystal ball and I was looking into my crystal ball and I went like, oh, oh, oh dear, I hate to say this, you're going to die in 1 hour. What would you do differently? Well, you probably wouldn't continue listening to what I have to say here. You'd probably go to your favorite pub and have the most expensive whiskey, or you go to your favorite ice cream place and go have a really huge sundae, or you might find your partner and make love one last time. I'm not sure, but if you only had 1 hour left, you probably wouldn't be sitting here listening to me. If you had one day left, what would you do differently? Well, you would probably do all those things. Plus, you'd probably also say goodbye to all your friends, etc., etc. If you had a week left to live, what would you do differently? Well, you would probably do all those things. Plus, you'd probably also see a lawyer or somebody like that to help you set up your accounts and write a final will. If you had a month left to live, well, if you had a month left to live, you would do all those things. Plus, you'd probably go on a nice holiday somewhere. Where would you go? Whistler, go skiing? Would you go to Hawaii, sit in the beach? Would you go to Greece and take a look at some of the old architecture? I'm not sure. What would you do if you only had a month left to live? If you had a year left to live, you'd probably do all those things, and you might decide, well, I like Greece so much, I'm going to spend the whole year here in Greece, and I'm just going to scam the credit card companies. Oh, did I say that? Yes, I did. I'm just going to scam the credit card companies because when I die, I die. But the problem comes in when we ask the question, if I knew you were going to die for a certainty in exactly 1 decade, what would you do differently? Well, you can't continue scamming the credit card companies because they are going to catch up with you. And so you're going to have to do something differently with your life. We don't know when that time is going to come. And yet, that time is going to come. So how are you going to live your life with more purpose and intention over the remaining time that you have? What would you do differently if you knew you were going to die? All right, that's pretty dismal and depressing what I just talked about. So you'll notice that I capped it off at a decade, 10 years. And there's two reasons. One is because life keeps on changing so fast. We have these things. Do you remember what 10 years ago, what these things looked like, these cell phones? They're so different now. They're so much more powerful now, right? So life changes so fast. And the other thing that I also look at is the stats out there are saying that most people go through at least 3 different careers in life. As I said, this is my 3rd career. And so, I look at it and go like, okay, so let's just look a decade in advance. All right. Okay, so then we move on to the 3 choices in life. Now, again, I've collated a whole bunch of data out there, and I've gone and relabeled things. But just to let you know that I've sort of taken this idea of the 3 choices in life from a couple of different places, such as Sigmund Freud, who had the 3 psychodynamic drives of the id, the ego, and the superego. You had Karen Horney, who had the 3 characteristics of social behavior. We had moving towards, we had moving against, and we had moving away from. And then we had the 3 coping strategies that were problem-focused coping, emotion-focused coping, and avoidance. And that was Singer and Collins. So I've gone and relabeled them. So you will see in the middle, there is a big circle, and out of it is 3 branches. So the circle represents the world, your environment, and what's happening. And in response to your environment, you have one of 3 options to choose. So you have fear and anger. Those are our basic instincts of fight or flight. You have on the other side, you have something called ambivalence, or sometimes referred to as complacency, or sometimes referred to as avoidance. And I use those words interchangeably. And then, hopefully, you're sitting here listening to this presentation out of purpose and intention, hoping that Patrick is going to say something that is interesting and useful in my life. So you have these three basic strategies, these three choices in life when life presents something to you, when the world presents something to you. However, Mr. Albert Einstein had this little saying. He said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, and each time expecting a different result, each time hoping that something different will happen. Well, quite often it doesn't. So I find that a lot of people look like this. They have a tendency of getting stuck. So instead of moving forward with purpose and intention, they will choose fear. And fear is a legitimate choice. And when you choose fear, the world will react to your fear. And then you'll have three choices. If you choose fear, you can notice that you go around in a circle. If you choose to avoid things, if you choose to be ambivalent about things, then we go the other direction, right? And eventually it circles around. Some people, what they do is they do a figure eight here. They circle around through fear, then through ambivalence, then through fear, then through avoidance, then through fear, and then through complacency, and they get stuck. So the idea is we want to move forward with purpose and intention. And one of the analogies that I use in moving forward with purpose and intention, I've got a bunch of them, but one of the ones that I use with moving forward in purpose and intention is designed originally by the folks who did the acceptance and commitment therapy, and that is the bus driver analogy. So each of these bits and pieces represent a metaphor that represents something else. So you're the bus driver. You didn't know you're a bus driver, did you? Well, you're a bus driver in this case. And that means that you're the person who is in charge of taking your life where you want it to go. All right? Now, the bus driver also has a bus that they drive, and the bus is representative of all the contents of your life, all the experiences, all the memories that you have of your life. Then we have the bus stop, where the bus picks up and drops off passengers, right? And then we have a designated route. And so this designated route is representative of your goals in life. And as I said earlier, there are many stops along the way. And so these are the points that you are taking steps towards that goal in life, whatever that goal might be. Okay? So we have bus driver, bus, passengers, and bus route. Now we go on to the fact that there are three basic types of passengers. You have the positive passengers. Believe it or not, bus driving can be a very lonely job. And so we have the positive passengers. Bus drivers actually like these people. These are the people who like to sit up right near the front and they chit-chat away with the bus driver. And then they might also say thank you when they get off the bus. So these are nice people to have on your bus. Then you have the neutral passengers. These make up the majority of the passengers in the bus. They tap their card, they sit down, and then they open up their phone and start scrolling through Facebook, or they take a little nap, or they plug their headphones in and listen to some tunes, or they might start talking to their friend, or, God forbid, they might actually open a book and start reading. I know, bad sense of humor. So we've had the positive passengers, we've had the neutral passengers, and that means one more set of passengers. And here we are. This picture kind of represents them. These are the negative passengers. These are the people who walk onto the bus with a $6 venti and say to the bus driver, I can't afford to pay the bus fare. They walk past the bus driver, they sit down at the back of the bus, and then they start yelling obscenities at the poor bus driver. Hey, bus driver, don't you know anything? Don't you know you're supposed to turn right here? Now that leaves the bus driver with a choice. So the bus driver can listen to these people and he can go, What'd you say? And now you'll notice that I've taken my bus off track and I'm taking my bus down some bumpy back alley and I'm getting tossed around. And all of the people in the back of the bus are also getting tossed around. Now, the positive passengers, bless their little hearts, they stay positive, albeit they might be a little more subdued. The negative passengers, they were already negative. They're just going to be negative. It is the majority of the bus that you're worried about, which is the neutral passengers. If they start getting jostled around, you can be guaranteed that they are going to turn negative. So I can listen to the passengers. Or as a bus driver, I can stay focused on, I'm a bus driver. This is my bus. I have this goal in life, these stops to make, and I'm just going to drive my bus. So who are these passengers representative of? These passengers are representative of your thoughts and emotions. And in particular, the negative thoughts and emotions are your fears and doubts. The negative passengers are your fears and doubts. So you have a choice of listening to them, or you have a choice of staying focused on your goals in life, moving forward with purpose and intention. Now, that's fear. And then the other alternative is, okay, then there is complacency. Well, again, my bad sense of humor, excuse my bad sense of humor. I've decided to live my life in ambivalence. Well, maybe. I can't decide. Oh, I'm so torn. Okay, so how do we deal with this avoidance, complacency, ambivalence? And this is where there's a guy by the name of Sean Achor who wrote a book on positive psychology. And from it, I have stolen this little intervention called the 20-second rule. And the 20-second rule basically says, bring your desired goals 20 seconds closer to you and take your distractions and put them 20 seconds farther away from you. This is based upon a fundamental human quality that we all have, and that is we're all lazy. We all want to do the easy thing. And so it might look a little bit like this example that I've gone and put down here. I have a goal of learning how to play my guitar. And so what I do is I take my guitar, I stick it in the stand in the middle of the room, right in front of my couch, versus keeping the guitar in a case in some closet in the house. Don't know where it is. So what's happened there now is I've got 20 seconds closer to my goal, which is to play guitar. Now, I come home from work, I'm tired, and what do? Instead of turning to the guitar, I turn on the TV. So what I do is to take that undesirable habits, I put it 20 seconds further. In other words, at night when I go to bed, I turn the remote over, I take the batteries out, I take them with me to the bedroom, put them into my bedroom dresser way at the back. The next day, I come out, I come home and my goal is to play guitar, but I'm feeling kind of tired. And so what's the first thing I do? I reach in and I try to press on my TV and it doesn't turn on. Well, my guitar is sitting right in front of me. I might as well play the guitar. And so this idea doesn't take away free will. You can still override playing the guitar, going to the bedroom and getting the batteries for your remote control. However, it makes it easier to follow your goals by bringing your goals closer to you and putting your distractions farther away from you. So that's Sean Achor's 20-second rule. I love that rule. Okay, one of the biggest elements of the positive psychology group is something called gratitude. It's one of their most powerful interventions. And so we want to have gratitude for the life that we have. So take some time to really savor the pleasurable moments. Reflect upon your accomplishments. really realize what you've done in life and how you feel. Okay? So this is purpose and intention and staying on track. All right, but wait just a little moment. Now, as I said, we're going to discuss a few caveats to the three choices and to purpose in and of itself. So it's kind of funny. I was putting this thing together. I had all my slides all done up, and then I happened to pull out an article, 2026, March 2026, Mr. Jordan Grumet. He's a medical doctor, and he talks about the paradox of purpose. And basically what he says is that lofty, audacious goals are often dependent on factors outside of your control and may be unattainable. So it is not likely with what I've done with my life to this point yet that I'm going to be the Prime Minister of Canada, if that is my goal. So sometimes the pressure to achieve these lofty goals can lead to stress, frustration, anxiety, a sense of inadequacy, and eventually burnout. Instead, we want to realize that there are big purposes and little purposes. And it's more the process of going through the purposes. So smaller daily things, like you can see I've got a lot of plants here, and I have to water these plants for the purpose of keeping them alive. So every now and then, I bring my watering can out and I'm watering my plants. There is purpose. I don't want to see my plants die. I want to see them get healthy and grow. These are small daily process goals. They're in line with the meaning of my life and my values, and these can all lead to the same positive outcomes that I previously discussed. If by chance I wanted to be Prime Minister of Canada, that might be beyond my control. Okay, so that's one of the things that we need to look at is the paradox of purpose. The other thing that we want to look at, I believe, yes, here it is that purpose is an ongoing process. As I said earlier, life keeps on changing. And so purpose in life is not a destination. Purpose in life is a way of traversing life. So it's a matter of, this is why I continue to go back to this future contemplation myself over and over again, because life keeps changing. All right. So what do I want to be when I grow up? I ask myself that at least once or twice a year, or other questions that I've also listed very near. So those are the two caveats on purpose. And then we have we have a comic here, my bad humor again. Remember, if life hands you lemons, make lemon furniture polish. It's more profitable than lemonade. Okay. So then we have the two caveats regarding the three choices in life. So one of the things I want to point out is that when we take the three choices in life, all three choices are necessary to make at certain times and places, certain contexts where all three are appropriate. So for instance, if you were to step outside of your house right now and somebody ran up to you and put a gun to your head and said, "Give me your wallet," it would probably be a good time to hand them your wallet out of fear, not to purposely go, "Well, excuse me, sir, guns make me really uncomfortable. And if you can put the gun down, we can talk about your compensation." How's that sound? Probably not the best time to try and reason things out. Act out of fear, give them the wall. Same with the anger. So I said fight or flight, anger and fear. If somebody, you're walking with your stroller with your kid in the park, and all of a sudden somebody comes and attacks your child, probably not a good idea to reason with the attacker and say, "Excuse me, sir, but I don't think," fortunately I chose sir, and I don't think that my kid is appreciating your accostement due to all the yells and screams that it is giving. Could you please back off, and then we can figure out what my kid did to make you so angry. Probably a good idea to just attack the attacker. Again, it depends on the context. Sometimes an attacker is not somebody you want to attack. Sometimes they are. So don't get me wrong. it's very much dependent on context when you use these. How about the other one, which is the ambivalence, avoidance, whatever you want to call it, complacency? I use this metaphor. You're going to have to sort of fold, spindle, manipulate this metaphor into what works for you. But I use the metaphor of going golfing. We've had a long, rainy winter. Finally, spring comes along. It starts turning sunny, and you and your friends go out to play golf. Well, you haven't seen each other all winter long, so you're chit-chatting away. The golf game is going really slow. And by the 13th hole, all of a sudden you realize, I'm kind of hungry. And so you wonder, I wonder if anyone else is hungry. And then all of a sudden, coincidentally, somebody puts their hand up and says, hey, I'm hungry. Anybody else here in the group? And you go like, oh, coincidence. And somebody else says, yeah, I'm hungry too. I know that there's a pizza joint at the end of the 13th hole. Why don't we eat there? Now, the question that I ask is, what's the greater purpose and intention here? Is it to eat healthy food, or is it to be out with your friends playing golf? And I would have a tendency to say, playing golf with your friends is the greater purpose and intention. You can eat healthy the other 6.5 days of the week. All right? So again, ambivalence is appropriate in certain contexts. Fear and anger is appropriate in certain contexts. It requires you to be thinking about the context and how you're going to react. The second caveat that I give is here, is you'll notice that I've color-coded things, and that is that we choose fear or avoidance. We'll pick avoidance in this case. You'll see that I've got an issue that arises, and I've got 3 choices: fear, avoidance, or purpose. And I choose avoidance. It's a legitimate choice. And I then have the world reacting to my choice, and now I have an opportunity to react to whatever the world does. I have the opportunity to react out of fear, out of purpose, or out of avoidance. And you can see we circle around. Well, you'll see that that center circle becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Your issues become more and more painful. The stressor becomes more and more difficult to change. So I'm going to say something here. I'm going to use very black and white terms. I'm going to say, if you choose avoidance too often, or if you choose a fear and anger too often, this center circle here, you are going to end up with a failure. And I'm going to call it 100% failure. Whereas when we go to the next slide, you will see that the world does something. I'm going to react. I'm not exactly sure if this is the right reaction to take, but I'm going to react out of purpose and intention. And when I'm reacting, technically I'm guessing. It's like the flip of a coin. 50% I get heads, 50% I get tails. Well, again, black and white terms, I'm going to say you got a 50% chance of failure and a 50% chance of success. Now notice how I word this thing, because I'm about to ask you a very rhetorical question. Which would you rather have? A 50% of failure, or, whoops, let me get up there, 100% of failure? Which would you rather have, 100% of failure or 50% of failure? They're both failure, but one seems a little more enticing than the other. So this is where I say, at least 51% of the time, you want to move forward through life with purpose and intention. All right. So I think that brings us fairly close to the end. Yes, I love this little thing. I believe this is originally an indigenous story, and it's a wonderful little story. One evening by the fireside, an old man told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people. The battle is between 2 wolves. One is evil, anger, envy, sorrow, regret, pride, ego. The other one is joy, love, peace, serenity. And so the grandson says, well, Grandpa, which wolf wins? And Grandpa answers, the one you feed. Feed your purpose and intention, small and large. Move forward for health and well-being. Alrighty? So that is, I believe, the end of my presentation. Going to say thank you very much. Want to remind people that if you, a loved one, a family member, a friend, perhaps a work colleague, is looking for some psychological support, you can go to our website and find a referral line to different psychologists for different purposes. So the website is psychologist.bc.ca/find-psychologist, or you can give our phone number a dingy ding and 604-730-0501, and we will try to set you up with a psychologist at the time. All right. So if you need some help, please, please, please reach out to us. We'll do our best to help you out. Okay, so I've just had a pretty big setback and I'm trying to find direction again. Yeah, that's hard. And do you have any advice? Well, I don't know if you're going to like my advice, but yes, I do have some advice. When people face a big setback, I just had this morning with a client, big setback. And the advice that I gave this person is, as much as possible, try to take a break, try to relax yourself so that you can start thinking about purpose and all those kinds of things. But you need to be able to be in a frame of mind where you can actually do this contemplation. So, as much as possible, take a break. And I suggested to this individual, he had just lost his job. I suggested to this individual that perhaps if he can afford it, take a month off, get his meds straightened out, get his head straightened out, do some counseling with me, and then start looking for another job. So it would be basically take a break first, then start doing the contemplation, start asking yourself, what do you want to be when you grow up? My bad humor. In my late 50s, and it feels like I missed the boat on having purpose, is it too late to start, or how do I even start? Yeah, I know. Late 50s. I'm going to say it is never too late to start finding a purpose in life. Take some time. Maybe you're going to go on holidays to Mexico or something like that. Take some time to lie on the beach, enjoy the beach, have a few pina coladas or whatever it is, have some good food, and spend 15 minutes just closing your eyes and looking inwards and asking yourself this series of questions that I've offered you. What would I like to see different in the next hour, month, year, decade? What if I knew I was going to die, what would I do differently in a certain period of time? What are my strengths, weaknesses? What are my values? What are my likes, dislikes? What do I want to be when I grow up? Take some time when you're on vacation, because the future contemplation really requires you to do some deep inner thinking, some real creative thinking, and that's the key. Stress has a tendency to compact our creativity so that we're not quite as creative. Whereas if we can take a month off like this fellow, or perhaps spend, a couple of weeks on the beach, that starts opening up our awareness. It starts making us more creative. And then we can start asking these kinds of questions of ourselves. Yes, I feel like I lack purpose right now, but then I think I might just be depressed. How do I know the difference? And I would say there are two things in helping you with this idea. The first is go talk to a psychologist who will help you sort of unravel all the stuff that happens in depression and help you find a purpose. The other difference is that depression often entails a lack of purpose. And it's this the idea of taking either the fear or the anger route, or taking the the anxiety, taking the avoidance, ambivalence, complacency route, that this, when you go around enough times in a circle, end up being depression. So that's why I said the original issue, which originally made you depressed, gets bigger and bigger and harder to change and becomes more and more painful. So there is a good chance that right now, the two of them are the same thing. But again, as I said, please go see a psychologist to try and help you parse that out and try and help you pull that apart and help you find something that is going to work for you. Today, some people focus on work, money, and always being busy, and being busy is often seen as success. Yet, it can still be a sense of emptiness. Very much so. Absolutely. How has this affected the way we understand purpose? And what advice would you give about purpose? One of the things that we sometimes do is we listen to other people's values. We don't look inside of ourselves at our own values. What is important to us? Is making a lot of money something that is really important to me? Or is my friend something that is important to me? Or is being a loving, helpful individual being of value to me? And it's important for people that quite often they get so busy with these other things that they forget, am I on track with where I really want to be in life? And they end up off track somewhere. So it's, again, I would say, take some time to slow things down. All I'm asking is 5 to 15 minutes a night where you just turn off all distractions, including work. I know that work keeps on dinging you still after you've gone home at night. You're still doing work there. It's a matter of take 5 to 15 minutes. It's not a huge amount of time where you just sit still, no distractions, and you just ask yourself some of those questions about how to find purpose. And then, don't be in a rush to find the answer. Because I know that for myself, in asking myself those questions, the initial questions that I put up, it took me, it was about 2 to 3 months before I realized what I want to do is I want to be in the helping profession. But even the helping profession wasn't clear enough for me, because helping profession to me could have been psychiatry, psychiatric nurse, psychologist, counselor, social worker. Could have been any of those. And it really was a matter of then that I had to go on and actually start exploring these a little bit. Basically, what I say to people is do your research. And finally, I landed on psychology and have loved it ever since. I'm still passionate about psychology. It kind of surprises me being in this now for 25 years, still motivated, still passionate about it. And still very much, this is my purpose in life.